Hi, my name's Jonathan Hicks. I'm back at the Dice Cup, and this evening I'm joined by
Dave,
Lucas, Andy,
and we've just finished playing Pulsar 2849, which is a space-heavy Euro, essentially. There's an awful lot to think about in this game. Now, what you're doing is you've got a little ship. I was yellow in this case, you can see my ship here, and you're kind of racing around the board. A lot of these planetary systems here are face down at the start, so there's a certain amount of exploration. When you pass over these, you sort of flip them over, and if you land on them, you get some kind of special ability. But crucially, you're also putting these tokens down. You've got a lot of endgame points. You can see people have got the tokens all over the board here. You're getting endgame points for having lots of those out. So that's one thing you're trying to do, is run around and explore on here. But you also have your own kind of private board, and you're trying to activate various spots on here. You can see I put some of my yellow tokens down, and they're going to give you various abilities. I'm going to come back to what all these things do in a minute. You're also trying to get these transmitters. These things are going to give you various points. This is the point symbol. When you acquire them, they kind of go over here, and they flip over, and you're going to want to combine them. These are effectively giving you different kinds of dice. Now at this point I probably want to explain what the dice are. So in order to do all of those things, the really interesting mechanism here is you have all these dice. Now at the start of every round we roll them and put them on the appropriate spots. They're a bit mixed up now, but if I kind of put them back where they are, thanks guys. And to cut a long story short, you position this depending on where the dice go. So in this round it was positioned here, and then you get to pick dice. But if you pick, let's say I pick this 2, I want to use a 2 on my round, then because I'm 2 to the left of the yellow marker, I then have to move 2 left on one of these 2 tracks. Now the top track is player order, so the further to the left you are, the higher, the earlier in the player order you are, which is obviously better. So taking lower dice is usually less useful in terms of doing stuff on the board, but it's obviously better in terms of player order, so there's an interesting decision to be made there. The bottom track you're getting these engineering cubes, which crucially will allow you to take an extra dice potentially. You can spend these cubes to get an extra action. So you're going to draft, you go around sort of horseshoe style, and you're going to draft a couple of dice. You might then be able to get a third one, and you spend these 2 dice in various ways. So if I wanted to do this action here, I'd have to spend a 6, for example. By the way, this is like a pyramid, so you have to do the bottom ones first, and you kind of build your way up. These ones give you little modifiers, the plus or minus 1 tokens, a bit like Castles of Burgundy if you're familiar with that. You can use it to add or subtract 1 from a dice, which makes it easier to place them. So if I want to do this action, I'd need a 1, this is a 6. But crucially, in terms of moving on the board, you just spend the dice to move. So if you've got a 5, I can take my little guy and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I land here, I get this ability. But what you're trying to do a lot of the time, and the reason it's called Pulsar, is you're trying to land on these pulsars here. So if you manage to land your ship on here, you take one of your little rings and you stick it on top, and you kind of claim that as your own. You then have to somehow acquire one of these gyrodyne things, I think, so you can spend dice to get these. Then you can plop it inside, and you have to spend another dice, in this case a 6, to flip it over, and then this is going to score me 3 points every single round. So there's quite a lot going on there, but just to add to that, there's also a big technology board, if you can see this here, and the different technologies get unlocked as you kind of move through the game. You get extra ones available. So you can spend dice. So for example here, you could spend a 3, and that actually gives you temporarily 2 extra dice, or maybe some cubes, or you can get sort of permanent special abilities. So this one, when you're placing on the sort of technology board, you can add or decrease your dice by 1, which makes it easier to place. You've got some end game scoring spots and various other things. You see they're going to add, this adds to your gyrodyne scoring when you're scoring. So you go through the game trying to get as much end game scoring points as you can as well. There are different types of end game scoring here for a certain amount of planets, or a certain amount of those transmitters, or on your own player board. And you add up all the endgame points along with all the points you got through the game, and whoever gets the most at the end is the winner. What do you think?
It's awesome, really good. The dice drafting with the tracks is really good. Really, like, I've never played anything like it. I think it mitigates a little bit of the kind of whole using dice to take actions. It's random what's going to be out there, but it's not random what you get. There's a strategy to it, and the fact that you can only have 1 red dice ever in 1 turn, so you're limited to 3 actions. Sometimes you can get away with just taking 2, but you want to try and take 3 as often as possible. There's so much going on. Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lucas?
Yeah, I agree with Dave. The engine based on dice is very interesting, and I liked it. Also, what I like is that the game is probably not very repetitive because you have these planets that can. Each game basically is probably slightly different, and the bonuses is always a nice thing to get a little bit extra from the game. Interesting concept. It was my first time, never played it before, so it took a while to get my head around it. But overall, I enjoyed playing it.
Okay, Andy?
Yeah, I really like this. I was glad I added this to games that I would like, and it was a purchase for me. It was a part of a Christmas present, and yeah, it is a great game. The dice drafting is really nice mechanism. I like games with dice drafting anyway, like Grand Austria Hotel, and this works in a similar sort of way, but is much faster because the horseshoe drafting 2 dice each. So first player goes around, last player draws 2, then goes back to first player. But it's the fact that you have to move up or down on tracks depending if you're taking it to the left of the median die, or the yellow marker, or to the right. And if you go too far right, you start getting negative points. And at the end of the game, I lost 2 points due to being forced by the way the dice came out, forced to be going right. Perils of going last. But yeah, it's sort of say that is a really nice system of which you want to go, because you want to be more left to get the bonuses, to go first, but also sometimes you want a lot of high values depending on what you want to do. And a lot of things I wanted to do was all high values. There's a lot of replayability as well, because there's 6 of these end game goal tiles, all double-sided. The tech tree and round tracker is built up of 4 boards. There are 4 boards of each section, and so yeah, there's a lot of variability there. Your HQ boards are double-sided, and you randomly select one each game. Then there's sort of the stack of exploration tokens that you can take, and the transmitters all come out in random orders each game. So yeah, it's a sort of huge amount of replayability. All in all, I really like this game.
Okay, rating?
I'd give this go about an 8.5 to a 9 so far.
Okay, Lucas?
I give it 8 out of 10.
I'm thinking a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
Really liked it.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was absolutely great. So much variability, as Andy was saying, in all the different endgame scoring, the tech track, your own player board. You get to decide which side you want that, which is really nice. And on your turn, there is just so many decisions in terms of options you can possibly take. But they're all really good. It's one of those games where you're not sort of deciding between the devil and the deep blue sea. It's like, I could pick this, which would be really good, or I could pick this, and that would be great as well. Ooh, which one do I really want? So it can bog down a little bit if you've got players who are prone to analysis paralysis, because there are so many options. You know, even just deciding where to move on the board because of all the connections. Like, I could go this way and get this bonus, or go this way and land on the Pulsar, and what do I do? There's so many different things to do. But actually that makes it fully engaging. You know, there's so much to be thinking about. There's a bit of downtime, particularly in a 4-player game, but actually most of the time I was just engaged thinking, you know, even if it wasn't my turn, I was thinking about what will I do on my next turn, because there's so many different ways you can combine the actions. Lots of different strategies I think you could take. Really had a blast with this one. I'd be on a 9 out of 10. Thought it was absolutely great. All right, thanks very much for watching. That was Pulsar 2849.